Well, it's the Lowdown podcast. We've got a little bit of a different style today, Cameron. We're following some developing news. We primarily focus on football, but the sports world is a bit shaken up from some basketball news involving three teams, but really the big news is between two teams and AD, a pretty big name in the basketball world. Cam, want to get kicking this off?
Yeah, it's this crazy thing we weren't expecting to see happen, but Luka Doncic, he's one of the biggest stars in basketball. We saw him get sent over to LA with LeBron James and company. And the strangest thing was the return package. It was a 2029 first round pick, Anthony Davis, who's a solidified star, so there's no question his talent. Um, but we've never seen it in like any other sport where we've seen a star pretty much who's 25 years old, the face of your franchise, get shipped off to a in-conference, rival. They're both being in the Western Conference. And
I think what really shocked me was exactly what you said there. At 25 years old, he's in the prime of his career, having an MVP type of season, and here you go. Head out
yeah,
to LA. It's just mind-boggling.
it's mind-boggling. But the more mind-boggling thing about it, Austin, is that I don't disagree with what Mavericks did. I am a huge fan of Luka. Really am. So I don't want this to become a knock on Luca. But I watched all the finals last year. I watched a lot of Luca. A lot of my fans are, or a lot of my friends are really big Luca fans. Um, and his conditioning has always been an issue. And you saw it in the finals last year when it was the Mavericks versus the Celtics, and he just couldn't keep up. He was just out of shape. He couldn't keep up. He couldn't play defense. He gave it his all when he was out there, but you can tell conditioning is a real problem. And he's only averaging, if he doesn't play another game this year, he's averaging playing 60 out of 82 games a year in his 7 year career. In which, yes, he's 25 years old, but 7 year career. He has been in the NBA for his seventh year now.
So I do want to ask about this because obviously I'm a football geek, and basketball I'm not quite as familiar with, but it just kind of has me wondering. Maybe you can talk a bit more about this. But for this, a guy who is MVP caliber but has these issues, does the trade to LA hope that maybe he'll get more into gear and
Well,
that would
it's
coming
a
into shape?
win-win
Or
scenario for LA too. That's what's crazy about this trade is because they didn't have to give up a first round pick this year or next year or all the way up until 2029. They had to give up Anthony Davis, but Anthony Davis has kind of been disgruntled there because they have him playing a center when he wants to play power forward. So because he likes to shoot the ball, he doesn't want to stand in the paint all game.
Mhm.
So he was a little disgruntled. I don't think that had a lot of weight in the trade, but it definitely had some merit to it. But being what is the biggest game changer and why I think it could be a win-win trade is Luka Doncic is now going to be with LeBron James. And LeBron James has proven to get the most out of his teammates, out of anyone currently in the NBA. We see this in all assets of sports. With the NFL, it's usually more coaching and culture that can get the most out of a player, like a Belichick, the Brady, the Chiefs. We see do it. We see Dan Campbell do it. We see it more with coaches in the NFL, but in the NBA, it's always been players. We saw that with Michael Jordan in the 80s, 90s. We saw it with Kobe Bryant. And now we're seeing it with LeBron James. So it's going to be very intriguing to see if this can be a win-win trade where Mavs win now, Lakers win now and in the future with having once LeBron's time is out, they already have their solidified star and Luka there to take over. And maybe LeBron can get him in conditioning shape. And another caveat that's interesting is because he was traded, before his contract was up, he is no longer eligible for a 5 year contract extension. The max contract extension he can get now is 4 years. So he cannot get that 5 year, 365, whatever $1 million a year contract. So now there's that other caveat where he can only make the 4 year contract. So the last time we saw a big win-win trade in any sport was the Lions Rams trade. I think it could have that kind of impact on the NBA.
Mhm.
It's just got a little more star power to it, being LA, Dallas, LeBron James being involved, and Luka being involved, who's an international superstar, because he came over from Europe when he was 17 to play in the NBA. So it's a fascinating story. I just wanted to give our take on it because the whole reason we started the podcast is because we had takes we wanted to share.
Right.
So I figured we'd
What?
share this take as well.
Yeah, whether you agree with it or not, it is what it is. And I do want to just throw some love out there to Utah because the Jazz did get a little bit of I don't want to call it a severance package, but it was part of the trade deal getting a Clippers second round pick, which is interesting too, out of all this, and then a
Yeah.
Maverick second round pick in 2025 along with Jalen. So, I mean,
That's what I love about the NBA, though, that you don't see in a lot of other sports is these three-team trades where one team will just be the dump off ground, where they're like, we'll take all your big salary players because they'll do these things called like cap dumps,
mm,
where they'll take an expensive player and they'll send it to a team, and that team will actually also get a pick instead of you like the team trading for a player and giving the team a pick. A team will give you a player and a pick to take that money off their books. So it's an interesting trade aspect in the NBA that they have.
yeah, well, that's our take on this blockbuster trade in the basketball world. Just know that we'll always be here for interesting takes around all of the sports world, but we're always doing our sports podcast mainly centric around football, the Lowdown podcast. Of course, we're going to have a brand new episode tomorrow night. That's Tuesday night, in which we're going to have our final reveals of the second half of our mock draft. Super excited. It's 1.0, but Cam, I think you and I are already looking at our next mock draft as things
Oh,
change.
we already are. And while we are in the spirit of talking trades, let's each talk about a name that has been in the NFL rumor mill of trade. I'll talk about mine first, and that being Cooper Cup. Sounds like he is going to be shipped out. Um, I think it's a very interesting move. Me listening to media, it's kind of a predictable thing to happen. What I think will happen with Cooper Cup, and obviously everyone's gonna say you're being biased, you're being biased. But look at the numbers. Who was his OC when he won the Triple Crown and the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl MVP? It was Kevin
AOC.
O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell. What has Minnesota been missing with the injuries to Hawkinson, the inconsistencies of the Nailers and the Osborns? They've been missing that surefire slot receiver. If they can get a good, deal going, Cooper Cup to work with Jordan Addison, who's still on his rookie contract, Justin Jefferson, who's locked up, Hawkinson, who's locked up. Oh man, what weapons for JJ McCarthy to be slinging it to.
Yeah, I mean, then you're adding a whole other gauntlet into the NFC North, which obviously the Vikings already were last year. So just to add extra firepower and what Bears could do, that's crazy. A name that Detroit was flirting with early on in the trade deadline, Miles Garrett, he wants out now out of Cleveland because he's just tired of losing
Can't
um,
blame him.
for the
Cannot
most
blame
part.
him.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to talk about Miles Garrett. I think there's one spot that he could land, and it's funny you bring up the NFC North because that's where this guy could go. Who knows if it's true or not, but I tell you what, think about their loss at edge rusher. They don't have a lot of pass rush right now in Green Bay, so that could be a place to watch for Miles Garrett to add some extra pressure.
Rashard Gary and Miles Garrett with Kenny Clark. Oh, they have the cap space. They have the assets.
Another dirty idea would be the Ravens, but I don't think that Browns would do that. So,
Oh, either way, that'd be a nasty D line wherever he goes.
of course, we'll be tracking it on the Lowdown podcast. And now you know if there's any other big sports news, we'll have our take on it. Thanks for joining us for a short version of the Lowdown podcast. We'll see you next time.
Till next time.